Since the release of DaVinci Resolve 15, there's been a lot of updates that have added a ton of different functionality. Today we're going to take a look at how we can easily make complex motion graphics like this. Alright, so jumping over into DaVinci here, if we look at this frame by frame, you'll see a lot of stuff that's going on. The background, we have some type of like scan lines. We have these little lines here with a space. And if we go through here, we can see that it's spinning. We also have a thing that's spinning here. And what you'll notice with that is we have a large gap and then a small gap and two bars here and then another large gap. In here, we have a ton of little lines, and for the most part, they look like they're all over the place dynamically. We also have a circle here that just pops up, and a couple of like little circles here that come, it looks like they come out of one little circle. They all pop out like this, and then they just start spinning pretty crazily. So we're going to take a look at how to build some of those different things. Let's just jump over into Fusion. All of these things were built with the duplicate tool. So the idea here is that we build one element and then we just duplicate it and we add a ton of different parameters. So if we watch through here, we see like all of these are moving, but then they're spinning. We have these spinning in the middle. There's a lot of different things that we're going to take a look at here. All right, so just jumping in here, we're just going to make the first element, which was that center circle, and it was a bunch of little chunks and they were all popping up. To do this, we're just going to grab a background and we're going to grab an ellipse and we're just going to connect those up. We're going to take this background, drag it up here so we can actually see it in this preview monitor. Then we're going to click on the ellipse. And one thing that I like to do is right click here and expression, and then drag it to the height. Because if we don't drag it from the height and we move one of these, they only move by themselves. If we have them linked together, I can move one and it'll move them both together. So it's just a way to save time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a circle here. And then I'm going to take that circle, I'm going to click on this ellipse, copy, which Control C, Control V to paste it. Now we have it pasted here. I'm going to move this in just a little bit, and I'm holding Control so that we have fine adjustments, because if I don't, it moves kind of quick. If you hold Control, it moves nice and slow. So we'll just have it just inside just a little bit. I'm going to click the paint mode and change this to subtract. So now I have just a very thin line. I'm going to change the color and make this a little easier to see. So there we go. I'm actually going to make it a little thinner. So I'm going to go out just a little bit. So there we go. Now we have our circle, but it was popping up as little pieces. So now I have to take this circle and chop it into different pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a polygon and I'm just going to connect this up. So now I have this polygon in here and I'm going to cut out a little piece that I want to use. So I'm just going to go like this. I'm going to cut out this little piece and then I'm going to come into here and go to multiply and paint, multiply. There we go. Geez. So now we have our little piece there. One of the things that you would notice that you noticed in here is that they kind of have like a little bit of a bounce. As you can see, it goes up and then it comes back in. So we're going to add that bounce in here. So how I'm going to add the bounce is with a transform node. So I'm going to hit Shift Spacebar to bring up my search for search tools. And then I'm going to just type in transform and bring up my transform node. Because I was clicked on background and did that action, it automatically popped this in with the connection already. If I was just to click here and type transform, it's just going to pop it up. All we really have to do is just connect from the out of the background into the in for the transform. Now my transform node, as you can see, this has a little dot over here, and that's just saying that this is being played over here. So to play this one over here, I'm just going to drag it up into here. Now this one's being played over here. If I was only playing this one and I make changes over here, I'm only displaying what's happening to this point. So you always want to be looking at the node in which you're working on to be able to see the effects. There are some cases where you don't want to be looking at the node, and later on I'll show you why you wouldn't want to look at the node in which you're working on. Okay, so I need to now make this bounce. So the idea here is that I'm just going to use the size and go like that to make it bounce. Okay, so we're gonna come to a random one at the beginning. So we'll just go to frame 4, come in, I'm gonna add a keyframe at 0, and then come up a couple of frames. I'm gonna go back to 1, and then I'm gonna come up a little bit further, and I'm just going to make another keyframe here. So we're gonna click on our spline tool. I'm gonna click this so I have a little more space. One thing I like doing when working in the spline tool is because this can get to be a little intense on all the different nodes here and seeing everything on the chart. I like to come over here and click show selected tool. And what that does is it only shows the parameters for that one tool, obviously. Okay, so here are our keyframes. I'm gonna click this little button to just see all the keyframes that this node has. And these are the keyframes. I'm going to click on this node and then hit F. What that's going to do is it's going to ease it. If I click on here, I can hit F2. The other tool that I have is if I hit T, I can change how that ease works, and it's always the one that's selected. So if I'm selecting this one, this is the outside of it. So if I sit here, I could change the out. If I wanted to, if I ever just want to go back to default, I can highlight it and hit F again. So what I want to do is I want to have that bounce. So I'm going to click right here, and I'm holding shift, and then I'm just going to go like that. And what this is going to do is it's going to come up, it's going to overshoot our point that we have here, and then it's going to come down below, and it's going to come back up. So let's take a look and see how that looks. Okay, so there's our bounce, but it's going very quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this one, and I'm just going to move it out a little bit. Okay, and this is a little bit more on the one side. I can pull this one up. I'm holding shift to move just the one handle. Okay, so there's our little bounce. So now we had the bounce. Now this is just this one piece, but this is the great part about the duplicate tool. Click in here, shift spacebar again, duplicate tool, bring this up. Now, the cool thing over here, let's pop this down, is I can add as many copies as I want. There's a time offset. I can change all of these as well, and that is what happens to the copies. So let's do 5 copies. We don't see 5 copies, and there's 2 reasons why. One is because we don't have that node activated. So we're gonna take this node, we're gonna drag it up here, so now this node's activated in this play monitor. The other thing is all of them right now are on top of each other because there's no there's no adjustments. So if I was to move these, then we see our copies, you know, but like the demo, what happened was it was in a circle. So we're just going to use this angle. So if I move this angle, what you'll notice is like you would normally put, oh, let's have it go in 360 degrees. We don't see anything. And why is it's because the distance between 2 copies. If it's 360 degrees, the distance is 360 degrees, so it'll just be at the same spot. So the easy way to determine how to get a perfect amount, like a perfect 360 or a perfect 180, is right in here. Any of these, you can put a calculation. So what I'm going to do is just 360 divided by how many copies I have, 5. So I'll put 5, hit enter, and then it'll do whatever that calculation is. And we've come up with 72, and we have a perfect circle. So now if we take a look at this, we have all of our little copies, but they're all moving the same. If you remember in our video that I showed you, they're all popping up individually. So that's where time offset comes in. Time offset is not a time amount when it comes to like watch time. A time amount is frames. So Fusion time is always determined in frames. So for our situation, let's just do 2 frames. So now if we do 2 frames, what you'll notice is there's a 2-frame delay, so they all pop up one after the other. Okay, so I actually want to go the other way because I want it to be -2 frames. So if I was to start here, it's going to start at -2. When it gets to 2, it's going to be at 0, and so on. Because if we look at the beginning here, it's already starting. So if we go -2, there's nothing here. Frame 2 is where it starts, and then they start popping up. Okay? So now if I play this, we see them popping up. Okay? If I wanted them to go the other way around, so clockwise, I could come right in here and put a negative. And now it's going to go the other way around. Okay? So now we have that. If we wanted it to be similar to the other one, all we would have to do is just in here put 6. And then in here, we're just going to put 360 divided by 6. And then there we go. And we could do more if we wanted it to, fill up. So let's do copies. Let's do 7 copies. That should fill it up. 360 divided by 7. Okay, it's pretty close. We could do one more and then have like overlapping a little bit, but I think that's fine. If I wanted to fill this up a little bit, all I would have to do, come into here, into our one node. So I'm just going to click on this one node, click right here. And then I can go like this, open this up a little bit. And now if I hit 1 over here, it's going to play it over here. And we can see that that's a perfect circle. So that is pretty much how we did the circle. Now, there wasn't a lot added in here, and the rest of the project is done the same exact way. So let's add the outside bars that we had, because there was a something else that happens in here that I would like to show you. So let's go with a green. So now if we take a look at this over here, I hit 2 to see it in the second monitor. So now let's shrink this down. I think that is pretty good. All right, now I could bring this out to here if I wanted to. So now I have that there. Let's say, before I had, so let's add in another one, but I'm going to subtract here and change the width, and then bring this in like that. So there we go. Now I have that bar that, or the whatever around the outside. If I wanted to add an animation in, I'd bring this down for this one because this is the whole thing. Copy, paste. Now I have that here. Come over here, go to multiply, come back to frame 4 or whatever frame you want to start your animation at. Come up a bit, add that there, come back, bring this over. Now if we just take a look at this, let's get rid of that. Take a look at this and see what we have so far. We have our little line appearing. Now if we wanted it to appear a specific way with ease in and ease out, you could take these, have it ease in and ease out. I don't think that's going to do much, but you could do that. Okay, so now we have our little line. What we could do is we could click here, shift spacebar, bring our duplicate up, right? And then let's say we wanted to do 10 copies. So like we did before, 360 divided by 10. And if we play that one, there we go. Now we have our like little star animation. But here is something else that you have to be cautious of. When you go from one node to the next node, you're just passing whatever in that node. So right now in this duplicate, this is what is here, right? This is what's here. So if I wanted to make this all rotate, so if I hit shift spacebar and did transform, just what's visible is going to rotate. So if I would click here and then click or rotate it and show it, what you'll notice is that you don't see anything here. And that's because it only passes what's here. So how do we animate this so that pieces aren't missing while it's rotating? Fusion is amazing because nothing is resolution based. So you can have all different resolutions in the project and then have them work together. So we're gonna come back here to this background and we're gonna come over here. We're gonna turn off auto resolution and we're just gonna change this to 1920. And the reason why I'm gonna use 1920 is because this is 1920 and we have room for obviously both sides. So now if we make it 1920, now we show everything. So if we come over into this node, now if we rotate this, we have everything. So now adding these two together, but maintaining the 16 by 9 and 1920 by 1080. How this now works is this is our node that we want to pass the resolution. So when there's a merge, whatever the background node is, that is going to state what the resolution is for that node. So we're going to take from here this output and we're going to put it on top of this output. So then what's going to happen is this will be the foreground and this will be the background. It's going to get whatever the resolution is here and it's going to pass it to here, and then this is going to feed in. So now we have everything. If we come back to this node and rotate it, now we're seeing everything as if it was never cut off. So that's one thing to pay attention to if you're adding, these kind of rotational things that, you have parts that go outside of the frame and come back in. You want everything that's built over here to be visible, or else you won't be able to see those things if you ever pass it and then add extra stuff. So now we want to have this rotate, so we'll just come back and we're on our transform. I'll just come back to 0, add angle, come to the end or whatever, and put 360. So now we have it rotating. So now if we play this, let's go fit. It's gonna come out and then it'll do all of its rotations. If I wanted to add anything in for the offset on our star here, I could, because right now it just kind of all opens up at the same time. If you can see that, if we get some caching going on here. Okay, so here we can see it all just pops up at the same time. Then it's coming over and it's feeding into this merge, and now we're kind of getting somewhere. So we can just keep adding on to this to get whatever we want our result is. And the cool thing is that we have a ton of different items here, but this is all the nodes that we have. Like, we have all of these little pieces, but this is all we have, and they're all very simple pieces. We made that and we made that. And we have this kind of cool animation going on here so far. So now let's add in another piece. And for this one, let's add in some circles. So we'll connect this up, come over here, go like this. And now over here, this is what we have. If we look at this, this is why sometimes you want to show something in another node, but then be working on, because now I can see where things are placed. So what I can do is I can shrink this down, right? Drag this over. Now if I play this through, I can see that it'll be right in here. I want to make sure that this is still at 0.5, because if I do a whole circle, I still want it to be inside of that. Actually, I'm going to come over here and I'm actually going to view this over here. Click here, and I'm actually going to bring this down so they come inside a little bit more. Something like that. Okay. So now over here, looking at this, bring this like that. Okay, so let's say that's what we want. We're happy with that. I'm gonna click here, duplicate, and let's make 15. And you're kind of getting the gist here. It's pretty easy. And now we have all these little circles. We're gonna add this on top. And now if we look at this, that's what we have going on. If you remember seeing over here, I had an outside ring of a circle. You could do this two ways. You could make a circle on top of a circle, and then the circle that's on the top, cut the inside out. Or you could come into here, and we're going to do gradient, change the gradient to radial. And then if we bring this over and add another little guy, let's add another one. There we go, 2 points. And bring this over. Actually, you know what we're gonna do? Click here, and we're gonna recenter this. I'll show you how to do all of this. So now we have it recentered. Take these little points, bring them in. There we go. And now I can do like that. So on one side you have one color, and then the other side you have the other color. Okay, so now that we have that, what the hell is going on over here? Jeez Louise. Okay, so now that we have that, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take, so right here's our background, and remember we want it to be out here. So we're just gonna go Shift Spacebar, transform, and then with our transform node, we're gonna bring it out here. And as you see, you could do a ton of different things. You could have these shoot out. So let's actually do that while we're here. Why not? So we'll have them all start in the middle. So we'll keyframe here, and then come to here. We're gonna click here, and we're gonna have it come out to, let's have it come out to there. And then the duplicate, we're going to make this -2. So now it's going to shoot out. We have all these little circles, they're just shooting out. There we go. They're all wobbling around a little bit. And then that is with everything else moving around. So now we're just continuously keep adding different things. So what you can do to maintain your computer's like speed, if you're not going to change anything up to a certain point, so what you could do is you could take all of these things, and instead of having your computer, make a duplication and then trying to render that and making another duplication, what you could do is you could pick wherever it is. Like let's say, okay, I'm done up till this point. You could right click here, cache to disk, and then pick where you want it to cache, and then render that, and it'll go through and it'll render it into a media file. So then your computer can bypass doing all of that work, and it just reads one file and whatever else is after that. So if you're adding a bunch of stuff after that, it'll read like a video file, and then it'll just add those things on top of that video file. Okay, so here we can take a look at what we have going on so far. There's a lot more elements that we could add. I would probably add something to these circles to maintain them moving, I would probably, after this duplicate, I would probably add like a light spin. It would probably be considerably slower than this outer one, but just enough so you don't have static. What I like to do is not have too many static objects. I want things to continuously be moving in some way, shape, or form, just to make it feel a bit more dynamic and not like, oh, you did this little animation and it did something light. But yeah, okay, so now we can, you can just continuously keep adding to this. There's a lot of other functionality that you can do within one of these duplicates. If we come over here, we can change to make it a little more dynamic. So if we take a look at the video I have these that are a bit more dynamic, and let's take a look at that actual project and I can show you what I did in it to make those dynamic, because I feel like it was kind of it's kind of informational for you guys to learn by. Let's try to figure out where it is. Okay, right here it is. All right, so we initially start with making our line, right? And that's all it is. It's just an animated line that comes across. And then we just transform it to bring it over a bit, and we add a little bit of a bounce. So when it comes in, it bounces just a little bit. So that's all that line is. And then we add a duplicate node. So it's just half. So it's just 180. And we add it 12, right? With a offset of 1. The other thing that we did, we added in what's referred to as jitter on the size and then also the angle. So as you can see over here, I had a keyframe so that they're all kind of spread out. And then by the time it gets over here, it's 0. And then to make this into a full circle, because I had so many pieces, I wanted to not have so much work going into it. So I just made a transform node that flipped it 180. And then I took the upside down one and the right side up one and I turned them into a merge, and then I have my full circle. So if I come back, we can see, these little bits here and these little bits here, they kind of, work together, and it kind of makes it look a bit more dynamic. And then after it did all of that, it was just kind of just sitting there, right? And I said I like to add more than just that. I also added in this transform, which the whole time it's jiggling it around, but then at the end is where you actually notice where it's rotating back and forth. So I felt that was that really added in a bit more to it. So take a look at that again. We can see that they're wiggling all around, but it's not too much where the movement of these straightening out kind of feels off, but it's just enough to make it feel like it's not just static, just sitting there. The only thing that's really static is this background, but I also did something with that. If you can tell at the beginning here, it's solid scan lines, and then as that circle comes on, I also cut the center out for that circle. And that was kind of like an afterthought, because when I added in the text here, I felt like it was too much here with these spinning and then the black lines. So that was kind of like an afterthought that I did. The only thing that I added motion blur on were these, just because I wanted something in there with motion blur and I like it. But adding a lot of motion blurring can kind of slow down your project considerably. So I only did it for that one group of items there. Around the outside, I've pretty much taught you guys how to do this and do this here. The only thing different with this outside line is it's kind of 4 groups of 2 with a larger space. So it's not that difficult. We have the lines here, those weren't difficult. I showed you how to do these and these little bars. So overall, it's not really, it kind of, you can always add more onto it. The text there that you've seen, it all comes out in different ways. I have another video that talks about the Text Plus tool and how if you look at it, it seems like there's a bunch of very basic adjustments. But if you add all those basic adjustments together and add all these different keyframes, you can get something that actually looks pretty dynamic, like I have here. So there's not too much to this. I was so happy to see that they brought the duplicate tool back. It was always in Fusion, but now they brought it into DaVinci Resolve's Fusion, which is freaking amazing. Now you can start to add a lot of really cool things here. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to show you guys the power of just the duplicate tool itself, and then adding a bunch of different elements in. And you have to remember too, like you can add those animations before the duplicate tool, and then you can also add animations after the duplicate tool to make it seem very dynamic. Because if you look at these circles here, they come out all together, and I showed you how to do this, and they go around, and then they kind of go over 360 degrees, because you can see that these two go together, and then these are all spread up because they're trying to do more than the spacing here for 360 degrees. But then I did a keyframe for it to bounce back like it's settled, and then they get kind of speed, and then they just keep spinning. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this one. If you have any other ideas or suggestions I should do in the future, let me know down there as well. Again, my name's JR, and thanks for watching.